This is the Red Podcast.
Hey, it's David Hooper. This is Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for experts. If you're looking to spread a message, get more people interested in what you're doing, make more money with that message, you are in the right place. This episode, a little bit different because I haven't seen you for a while. I wanted to do a COVID-19 check-in. We are about 9 months in to the coronavirus lockdown. That's what I'm calling it. You may be out and about doing your thing, but for my industry, and maybe for yours because you're here listening to me, if you're out spreading a message, you can't do that as easily. If you want to get groups of people together, we can't do that as easily. But there have been a lot of opportunities that have come up because of this. I know in the music industry, where I used to live and where I still live, sort of, just by being in Nashville and being involved in the broadcasting aspect of music marketing, those guys pivoted. They pivoted quickly. And where they were doing a bunch of live events, they've started to do a lot of online events, and they've been very creative about it. That's exciting to me because I think that when we do flip things and get back to normal, whatever normal is going to look like, and we can get in the same room and see each other again, we're going to have all this new stuff that we've come up with. So we're adding to it, much like we did with Spotify and the streaming services, much like we did with radio. When radio came around, people were like, oh my God, this is the end of live music. No. It made live music more interesting to people because they were familiar with the songs, the same as buying albums or records. The same thing with streaming. The music industry has expanded there because if I tell you a band, you can go look at them right now on Spotify, hear them instantly without having to look for them, having to call a radio station, hope that they would play it. You may be old enough to remember that. Anyway, the business has changed a lot. In our business, the expert business, it's also changing. So I wanted to check in with you since I haven't done that for a while to talk about some of those changes, talk about what I have been doing to work around this coronavirus thing and make the best of it. I joked around when this thing first started that I knew I would be good to at least finish out the year. And that's where we are right now because I work from home most of the time. At one time, I was doing weekly interviews at a radio station. Don't do that now. We actually had one today, 5 people on the line at the same time. It's me, a producer, an engineer, and 2 guests. And it was great. Super easy. I did it from the Red Room, which is basically a tricked out closet, if you're not familiar with where I record. And it sounded great. I could keep that up. My wife, she works from home most of the time. We have a photo studio in our home. Most of her indoor shoots are here. She can do things elsewhere as needed. Somebody needs to fly her out, do a shoot. If she's going to do something outside, obviously there's scenery in the background and she needs to be on set for that. But 95% of the work right now, it is here in our house. And I bring that up to say that we were good with this mentally. I know some people are having a difficult time staying in one place. Maybe if you're like me and you're married, you weren't used to hanging out with your spouse so much. Maybe you've got kids. You need a little space from them. If they're not able to go to school, it's a lot of time together. That hasn't affected me as I know it has a lot of people. Don't have any kids, so that hasn't affected me at all. As far as my wife, I was used to seeing her around. We work well together. There's something I used to see with a lot of bands on tour when they were all packed in the van together. The band that actually told me this for the first time, it was an indie band running out of maybe a 16-passenger van with a trailer behind it. But I've talked to a lot of bigger bands, guys that were touring out of buses. They have this same thing. And that is when they were on the road, on the bus, going from one town to another, they wouldn't say anything. It'd be like a cone of silence. People are listening to headphones, they're reading. They just needed that downtime. So if you are in a house and there are a lot of people around, maybe you want to think about doing that. I know this evening, I was working on a direct mail campaign. My wife, she was relaxing. Normally, we're not in rooms next to each other. I've got the upstairs portion of our house. She's got the downstairs portion of our house. But in this case, I was spread out over a dining room table. I needed a lot of space. She was in her office, not working, but watching a movie. She has a really comfortable chair in there that she works out of. She's like, I'm going to watch a movie in here tonight. I said, okay. Do you mind using headphones? No, I don't mind using headphones. I was listening to music. I'm using headphones. So it's me, her 10 feet away. We're not bothering each other at all. Got a dog on the couch in her office. It was great. That may be one thing that you can consider if you are spending a lot of time with people in close proximity. My house, 2 floors, as I mentioned, pretty big. I think it's 3,200 square feet, something like that. So not huge, but big enough for a couple of people to spread out. I feel like we could probably do pretty well, I don't know, half the size. If you're in a 1-bedroom or maybe a studio apartment. I don't know what my New York friends are doing, but you figure it out. And that might be one way to do it. As far as the work aspect of things, nothing for me has really changed. With the exception of going into the studio, a lot of my production work, that's done here in the house on the computer. I've got my studio set up here, as I mentioned. I call it the Red Room. It's a tricked out closet, probably about, 5 by 10, 5 by 8. It's not real big. It's big enough to put a couple people in, and I only need room for one because that's the safest way to do things right now. I do miss seeing guys in person, seeing guys at the station when I would go down there, including the people that I work with, sitting in the same studio as them, seeing the guests that we would bring in. But, it's something that I'm willing to work around to keep them safe, to keep me safe. One of the things that you might not have been affected by, that I certainly have been affected by with all the people that I know that are out and about in public, because there still are live shows going on. There still are events that are happening where musicians are playing. I know a lot of people who have come down with this thing. And some of them, it's mild. They're not really affected. Like, oh man, it's just a mild flu. Good on them. But I also know people with what I'm going to call it long hauler syndrome. That's what I've heard it referred to, that they have been knocked out for 5-6 months. I know one guy, he was getting up about 30 minutes a day was all he could muster just to answer emails and get to emergencies that were going on in his company. And he was sleeping all the time. And this is a young guy in his 30s. He was exercising all the time, eating healthy. He was good. He was good until he wasn't. So I'm taking it really seriously, trying to do what I can to stay out of the fray myself, but also not put anybody else at risk and make them feel comfortable, show them a different way of working. With all of this said, I think for me mentally, something that threw me for a loop when this started to get serious, and you may be going through something similar to this, because I've talked to a lot of people that were self-employed. Some people set up for this like I am. Some people not set up for it. I was really thrown off when I didn't have the option to go out. Not that I wanted to, but I like the option to be open. Over the past 20 years, one of the things that I've done, and this was advice that was given to me by somebody who worked from home, and I've had offices during this time, but I still think it's important if you're working on your own business to still do this, even if you are going to the office, coming home, going to the office, going home, is to have a daily trip outside of that. That was something that I would make sure that I would do every single day. 90% of those trips, that was me going to the gym, going to the yoga studio, doing something where I could take care of myself mentally, physically. And there are other little things in addition to that I would do to take care of myself in that way. I also liked being able to leave the house with my wife because we are working here together, even though we're separated, sometimes by a floor, sometimes by just a few rooms. But to be able to leave the house and not just have maybe like a roommate situation where we're working all day, eating dinner, going to bed, waking up, doing it again, but something that made us feel we were in a relationship together beyond the 4 walls of our house. I can still do both. You can leave the house. I can certainly leave the house with my wife, but where would I go? And it's not like I really wanted to go anywhere. It was just the lack of control, the lack of being able to go somewhere if I needed to and being able to do that safely. That was, for me, the biggest issue with COVID-19. I like options. You might connect with this. Have you ever had the experience where you're dating somebody and you're not really into her or him, whatever works for you, no judgment, and you're ready to break it off, but that other person breaks it off first, and then you're pissed? That's what this has been like for me. I like options. I don't really want to go out, but I like the option to be able to. And one of the options that really threw me for a loop was when the gym closed. As I mentioned, I like going out every day. Not really forcing myself, but just making a habit of getting out so I don't get caught up in a rut. Because I've seen this so many times with people that are self-employed and people that don't have to leave and people that work from home. I know guys that haven't left their house in 4 or 5 months on purpose before COVID. That was a thing. I would see him out when we were traveling. Hey man, how's it going? Well, you know what? I literally have not left the house since you saw me 3 or 4 or 5 months ago. Those kind of people exist, and they definitely exist in my industry, the industry of marketing and being able to do a lot of things online or being able to record things in your house. And when this thing started, I got this email from my gym that said they were closing indefinitely. I lost my shit. Not that I'm some kind of gym junkie. Get them motherfucking gains. Not like that. But it was a place that I would go to feel better. Like I said, I'm going there for the physical exercise, but I'm also going there for the mental exercise and the mental break. And before this, either the gym or the yoga studio, I was somewhere daily to make sure that I got out of the house and to make sure that I was taking care of myself. And that email to me symbolized that this was real. It's real. It's indefinite. A couple years ago, here on Red Podcast, I talked about this. I was in Philadelphia. I got on an airplane. It had been an exhausting week for me. We were the one flight out of the airport that hadn't been canceled. I get in the aircraft. It's a packed flight. They close the door on the aircraft, and we're sitting there, and we're waiting. We haven't pulled out, and I get a message from the captain. It said, all right, everybody, thank you for your patience. We're not going to be able to leave because this storm is coming through. So we're just going to sit here, see if it blows over. And I lost it. I had a panic attack on the plane. I thought, no joke, that I was going to be taken off that plane. I got up. I went to the back of the plane. I was feeling dizzy as hell. This had never happened to me. And I'm walking in between the seats, holding on to the seats as I'm walking to the back of the plane. I was like, oh, I got to splash water on my face or go to the bathroom or throw up or something. I didn't know what was happening. And all of a sudden I couldn't see. I dropped to my knees. I look up, face level, the lavatory latch is in front of me because I'm on my knees. And I hit that latch and I crawl into the lavatory and I hear this, sir, are you okay? And I'm sitting there like splashing water on my face. I don't know what I was doing. Breathing, who knows? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm cool. I don't think I locked it. They could have walked in. So I sit there for a minute and I walk out and these flight attendants are there, like 3 of them. They're hanging out on the back of the plane. And I didn't realize that everybody had been watching me. They got me water and they were, I'm sure, watching me as we sat there on the tarmac for a couple hours and eventually did get up in the air and eventually landed in Nashville a few hours later. But this lack of control thing, it's a thing for me. And maybe not so much the lack of control, but lack of control paired with something that's indefinite. Because when the captain came on, he's like, yeah, we may be here for a few hours. Who knows? We may be here all night. We may be here for a few hours, and then we're going to open that door, and you're going to spend the night in the airport. I'm going to spend the rest of this episode talking about situations like this because I think we're into one. We're getting ready here in this country to have holidays, a lot of family gatherings, cold weather, a lot more people inside, a lot more traveling, a lot more people in cars. And if scientists are right, and I'm saying that they're going to be, unfortunately, we're going to be having a lot more cases of COVID-19. You may be in a situation where your income is affected. I talked to one guy. He's a guitar player for a major act. If I mentioned them, you would know who they are. And I'm not going to say who they are because it's kind of scary and it's kind of personal. But it's a guy who is on the road 250 dates per year. Since this has begun, so about 9 months in right now, they have done 1 show and it was at a drive-in movie theater. They made it an event, one show. During this time, normally, he probably would have had 200 of them. What has that done to his income? Another friend of mine, New York Times best-selling author. This guy's in the mid-six figures as far as the money that he brings in every year. Let's say $500,000. It's not bad. Overnight, 70% of his income dried up. And we don't know when it's going to get better. So let's talk about this. Working with the options you have at the time. Let's take it back to the gym email that I got. I was a little frustrated. It became real for me. Oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do. For the last 20 years, I've been doing this 7 days a week. This is what's keeping me sane. This is how I burn off all this excess energy and how I don't use that excess energy in bad ways. Maybe drinking a lot or drugs or stealing stuff. I joke around about stealing stuff. You can't do that from your house, right? But I'm a firm believer for somebody like me, like an entrepreneur, somebody who's out speaking a lot. You got to work with that energy that you got, and you want to do it in a positive way. So here's what I did. The first thing I did, I got on Amazon. I started buying some home gym stuff. Everybody else must have gotten that same email that I got. Hey, gyms are closed. What are you going to do now? So all the gym junkies also on Amazon with me, also on any of the home fitness sites, all of the weight-related stuff, meaning plates, barbells, dumbbells, that was sold out. No plates, barbells, dumbbells, sandbags. Lots of people in the same position that I was. So the first thing that I purchased was what I could, body weight equipment, meaning I'm lifting myself up, push-ups, pull-ups, dips. I got a dip station, kind of like parallel bars, so I can do dips. I can do pull-ups on them, kind of. They're not high up, but you're at an angle. It's not as good as a real pull-up. Got a push-up tool called Helm. I'll have this stuff linked in the episode notes. Helm is something, if it's on a balance ball, you know, those half balls that people blow up and they balance on, it allows you to do push-ups with a closed grip. So it's easier on your wrist. It's pretty flexible. It's a pretty cool tool. I got one of those. Basically 3 things: the dip station, the Helm, and the balance ball. Had the same issue with cardio equipment. No spin bikes available. Peloton, sold out. Rowing machines. I used to row. My sister was on the rowing team in college. Sold out. Could not get them. What I could get, a couple of jump ropes. And since that time, with the exception of a couple weeks, because I went too hard at first, went so hard that my quad muscles stopped firing, couldn't walk for a couple weeks almost. I've been doing that about 5 days a week. It's been good exercise. It's been a lot of fun, actually. Today, I did about 45 minutes, a little over 1,000 calories. I didn't think I would like it so much. I did it when I was a kid. I did a little bit of it post-college, doing other kinds of training. But I've never been a huge jump rope guy other than those 2 times in my life. And it's good. It's good. My blood pressure is actually down. I went to give blood. Something that you can do, by the way, if you're interested in helping people who have COVID. We need more blood right now because of things like that. They did my blood pressure. It's 106 over 69. So pretty good blood for a guy who's 48 years old. I feel like I'm in the best cardio shape of my life. Had to work up to it. And just a side note, the rope I was able to get, it was a heavier rope. Those are easier to start with, although it sounds like it would be more work, because the feeling of the rope is a 1.5 pound tie rope that they use for fighting and the MMA guys use. Just happened to get it. I'd worked with those a little bit before. I had a friend of mine who was real big on it. So yeah, I'll try this, because sometimes the speed ropes, you know, you got to work up to them. It's not that easy to jump rope with a speed rope because they're so light and because you can't feel them. But 1.5 pounds, believe me, you're going to feel it. That leads me into the second idea of this episode, which is do what you can to feel normal, even if you have to modify it a bit. For me, it's modifying routine, but it's also modifying the exercises that I was doing. And I was pleasantly surprised. I actually liked jumping rope. I was biking before. Sometimes I'd hop on a Stairmaster or something. Not really a runner, just because of the impact now. Used to do that more than I do now. But this has been great. It's something new. I never would have been turned on to it. Like I said, I did it post-college. I did it when I was a kid. I mean, like 10 years old maybe. And that's been one of the good things that's come out of this is being locked down. It is forcing me to look at different options, just like the music industry. It's saying, hey, we can't play live anymore. Let's see if we can do this stuff online. And for me, hey, I can't leave the house anymore. Let's see if I can get a home gym, but not go so crazy that my wife doesn't want to be with me anymore. Because I was looking at doing that. I was looking at tricking out the garage, get my pull-up bars in there. If you look up home gym on Google or on Facebook, you'll see some of these guys. Man, they got them tricked out. And I wasn't going to do that. And I didn't have some options, but I had others. Like I said, didn't have the bike, couldn't get myself a rowing machine. So I was like, all right, I'm going to work with what I've got. I think if you do what you can to feel normal, working with what you've got, working with what you know, and working with what's available to you at the time, that can make you feel so much better. One of the things I mentioned that we used to do, my wife and I, before any of this, we were going out, leaving the house, making an effort to do that. Even if we can't go anywhere now, like date-like stuff, even if it's eating in the park, even if it's going out, getting takeout that we can do safely, bringing it back, we do that. Maybe it's on our front porch. Maybe it's on that table where I was doing my direct mail campaign earlier this evening. You do what you can. You do what you can with what you have. Think about it. Try some stuff. If it doesn't work, you don't have to do it. Like I said, the new stuff, it might work out better than the old. We got the holidays coming up. Maybe you've been traveling for the last 10, 20, 30 years. Think I'll stay put this year. You might like it better. I saw a survey earlier about Thanksgiving. Do you like ham or do you like turkey? Neither. Vegetarian, man. Neither of those things. You know what my wife and I do every year? Pizza. Make your own tradition. Do something that works for you. Who cares what the Pilgrims did? Do your own thing. Speaking of doing your own thing, another benefit that's been great as far as going through this process, we had to clear the decks when this thing first happened. Where I am in Tennessee, they were saying safer at home, stay at home. And it was a good opportunity for us to clear the decks of extraneous stuff that wasn't really working for us. Meetings, other things we were doing in person that we could have done remotely. I think of it like getting a brand new computer where you've got all this old stuff on your old computer. You get that brand new one and it's so fast because it's not bogged down with that old stuff. Moving to a new town, you can start fresh. Nobody knows who you are. Start fresh. Be whoever you want to be. That is the opportunity that we have now. And if you are having a hard time right now, think about these things. Work with what you have right now. And know this, we are all right there with you. Everybody is going through this together. Some people are in better shape than you are. Some people not as good a shape as you are. But we are all in this together. You are definitely not the only one. So if you need to, reach out to people. Get connected. That's a new way to get connected. That second thing I mentioned, do what you can to feel normal or close to normal. Maybe you'll have a new normal. Maybe something you thought was working for you, you were doing it just because everybody else was doing it. Or you doing it just because your parents did it. Or just because, who knows? You got into a rut, you're doing it on autopilot. This is an opportunity to break that cycle, pattern interrupt, start your own thing. Pizza for Thanksgiving. Look for opportunities. That's the third thing. I talked about the music industry. They're doing these drive-in shows. They're doing these online shows. Us from Music Business Radio, instead of going into the studio, we're doing these things remotely. Next week, talking to a guy from Germany. We weren't doing that before. We were making people fly in to see us. Now we figured out this remote thing. It makes things so much easier. We're opening ourselves up to new income streams. You can do the same. If it's not that good, don't do it again. Even if it's not better, maybe you want to stick it out because you can still have both. We're going to get out of this thing. It may be a year before we do it, but we will get out of it. And you will have developed all these skills and the tenacity. And you'll have some great stories. Like I told you about the panic attack on the flight. Hey man, not fun to go through. A little embarrassing. But it's a great story. And you've got an opportunity to have a lot of these great stories in the upcoming year. You probably already have some. So chin up, man. If I can help you, reach out to me at David Hooper on Twitter. I'd love to know your story about how you're doing during this time, what you've done better, what hasn't worked for you, what you think you're going to try in the upcoming year. If you want more from me, more of Red Podcast and the other podcasts that I do, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. You'll see all the podcasts that I do. I've got one called Build the Big Podcast. That one is for podcasters. And if you're an expert and you want to become a podcaster and you want to grow your podcast, that one is good. This podcast, Red, the marketing podcast for experts, is there. I've got some other podcasting related stuff too. Material to help you be a better interviewer. I've got some things to help you be a better solo podcaster. All of it there, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I hope you're finishing out the year strong. And again, if I can do anything to help you, let me know. At David Hooper on Twitter is the quickest and easiest way to get me. I will definitely see that, and I'll definitely get back to you very quickly. Thanks so much. I'll see you on the next episode.